When most people hear about the address element for the first time, they automatically assume it's designed to mark up things like, well, I don't know, postal addresses. Well, of course it isn't. That would make sense. No, it's actually designed to do something quite different. So before we start working with it, let's check out what the specification has to say. So here I am in the HTML5 specification. I have navigated to the address element, and let's just take a look at the definition below all these different property values. The address element represents the contact information for its nearest article or body element ancestor. If that's the body element, then the contact information applies to the document as a whole. So it's really about contact information, and that could pertain to an author of an article, or it could even mean the contact information for an entire company. And you really have to use this judiciously, and there's a lot of judgment calls about when it's necessary and when it's not. My take on that would be when semantically you want a person, an individual, or a robot to be able to search through and find the proper contact information for an author of a particular document or article, then it's really the proper use for it. You don't want to wrap every bit of contact information in an address element because that's really not what it's for. It's really for the contact information for the generator of a specific article or document. Okay, so going back into our trails.htm, this time from the 03_07 directory, what I want to do is find the footer for our main article. So if I scroll down, I'll find our main article, and then going down a little bit further to say about line 77, 76, somewhere in there we go. We have a footer. Its class is article footer, and inside of that, we have some information about the author, Daniel Weston. We see that he lives in Oxnard, California. He's got some various houseplants, daughter, wife. He writes about mountain biking, web design, and the outdoors. Oh, and here we have some contact information. So inside the footer for the main article, we have contact information for the author. So this is really a great example of when the address element can come into play. Now, do I want to wrap the whole thing in an address element? Yes and no, not really. The line about the author, I would like that physically to be on a separate line just because it would look a little bit better. But then the rest of it really sort of meets that criteria. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the closing tag here for this paragraph. I'm going to cut it, and then I'm just going to paste it on that line about the author, and I'll just hit return. So visually, I give myself a little bit of separation there. So now about the author is in its own paragraph inside the footer. And then we have Daniel Weston lives in Oxnard, California, da-da-da-da-da. So all of this can be wrapped inside an address tag. Now, you might be saying to yourself, well, wait, it's not all just the contact info. The contact info is really kind of just this link. Well, that's true. But the nice thing about the address element semantically is that the contact info just needs to be inside of it. So if you have some brief descriptive text, it's fine. Obviously, you wouldn't want to go multiple paragraphs, but if you just have a few lines of text, think about it like a tweet, 150 characters or something like that. You're in good shape. A single paragraph or a brief description, there's nothing wrong with that, just so long as the contact info is also involved inside of that. So what I'm going to do is highlight all of this sort of newly orphaned text, and then I'm going to wrap that in an address tag. So I'm just going to save that. And now if I take a look at that in the browser, I can see that stylistically I have about the author on a separate line, which really looks nice. And then I have the contact information down below that. Now, again, it's formatting visually. It doesn't really matter because I can use CSS to style this any way that I want. Visually, I'm giving a little bit of space in between that. But semantically, when we go back to the code, the address element tells us that we can find the contact information for the author of the article inside of this tag. Now, if I scroll down to the very bottom of the page, the footer, I can see inside that I also have contact information. I have a couple of phone numbers. I have an email address. I have a physical address. I have some additional phone numbers. So there's a lot of stuff here. So now technically, a lot of this could be contained within an address element. The real issue here is that within an address element, you can't have a lot of additional structure. So you can't use any sectioning elements. You can't use footers or headers. You're really looking at that being just kind of flow content. The other thing is it's not always appropriate. This is indeed contact information for the company, and it does kind of pertain to the document. But in terms of like being the author of the document's contact info, that, again, semantically is more of a judgment call. And in this case, I've decided not to use the address element because I just don't think it's a narrow enough focus in this case. So really, it's really up to you as an author. And in this case, I thought, the contact information for the author of an article, yes, address element works out fine. Contact information for the company that the site's referring to, and that's a little bit more vague. So as you can see, whether you use the address element or not can a lot of times be really just a judgment call on your part as an author. And because of the fact that a lot of folks really don't understand exactly how it should be used, it's probably a little underutilized in terms of how often it's used in the wild. Now, if you do decide to use it, make sure that you have a clear use case for when it should be used in your site and that you're focusing on providing specific contact information for the source of a specific section of content.